Hey guys, I got my 2020 Chrysler Pacifica in the shop today, and we are going to do spark plugs. I'll show you how to do this job. It's not too hard. We can get it done pretty quick. Just stick with me. Check it out. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is remove these two 10mm bolts holding this engine splash guard on. There's pop tabs on this back end that you just need to give a nice little tug, and the whole thing will pop off. I'll set that aside. Okay, we have a 10mm right here that holds this breather assembly on. Once that's out, there's also another pop joint back here. I'll take you off and show you. Right here. And we need to pop that one off as well. It's also going to be necessary to take this 8mm snorkel clamp off. Just pull that back and off. Now this whole assembly should walk off of here. Like that. There's no clamp holding it onto the throttle body. Odd design. We don't need to fully remove that. We'll just push it back and keep it out of the way. As long as we can get this intake manifold off, we've got more than enough real estate to work with. So let's start by looking for any hoses or connectors that are going to interfere with taking this out. If you've had the joy of working on a Chrysler product already, you know that you have these nice little red tabs that never like to do what they're told. So sometimes they work. Like that one, I pulled the tab just to pull the tab out and the whole clip came off. So, you know, kind of not the greatest, but could be worse. Right down here, we have a handful of 10mm bolts holding these two lines to the intake manifold. They need to come off. These two right here that you can see in frame, probably easiest to do those with a ratcheting box end wrench like this. I'm going to show you guys some of these hoses and how to get them off. This guy right here, you're going to pry this red tab upwards. Push in a little bit as you pry upwards. It'll help it release, and that'll pull off like that. This guy right here, we're actually going to take this whole thing off as one piece. We're not going to undo that there. We're just going to undo this connector. You push it and pull it off. And then undo this hose, and this will be on here like that. You'll lift that whole thing up and off and pop this out of this back little notch back here and set that guy back and aside. This one right here, you press that tab in and pull the whole assembly back, and it should pop off. We are then going to want to take and remove this hose clamp right here off of this hose. I believe this is for air injection or EGR, something like that. We're going to want to get these clips holding this guy into here off. Undo that clip. Once we get this thing up, we're going to probably take that one off as well. This comes off of here by just pushing this tab in and pushing back towards the car. It might fight you a little bit, but it'll come off. We'll get this set out of the way. We took another little clip connector off right there to move that out of the way, and that gives us access to our 8 bolts that hold this intake manifold onto the lower plenum. So you can see them all there. I'll start taking them out. They're 8mm bolts. We'll take those out and see where we're at from there. Also a shot down in here to see these guys that we took out. And there you see it's loose now, but we've got something holding it down here by this throttle body. Okay, I have two things I took off on this side over here. I'm going to show you once I get it out what I did. But basically, once you get the bracket right underneath here that holds it to the motor and this EGR valve off, you'll just lift up on this side and pull it out like that. And that should be about it. When you're trying to get this intake off, there is a tab right here that is right there, and it has a 10mm bolt holding it on. And you're going to need to get that off, and I would also recommend taking off the EGR valve as well. So the EGR valve will be right here. We had that hose connector that went to it right there that goes to the EGR cooler and the line. And there's going to be 3 bolts holding it on. 1, 2, and 3. This one right here just has a wire holder pressed onto it, and you'll pull that off. So you'll get these 3 off, and I would recommend taking this off, mostly because when you get it off, it is going to be super dirty. I have cleaned this one. You can see how nice and clean it is, but yeah, you want to take this out and clean it. It's funny they put EGRs back on cars, you know. They had them off for so long because of variable valve timing, but they're back. So once you get that off, you can set this whole thing aside. You'll take the connector off for the throttle body, and that should be everything. Then you'll get into changing those spark plugs. Spark plugs are going to be pretty straightforward. We've got 10mm bolts holding the coil packs on. You'll just loosen those. They're captive, so they won't pull out. And then you take the whole coil pack. I'm going to leave them plugged in. It's easier. And you gently pull up on it, and it should pop off of the boot like that. And there we go. Next, we're going to take our 5/8 spark plug socket with an extension and a ratchet, stick it in the hole, and take them out. We have got a really nasty spark plug right there. Whew. I bet you these are the original ones, and this thing's got 100,000 miles. Hard to believe, 2020 with 100,000, but it happened. For comparison's sakes, here's a new one. You can see she's a lot better shape, so we'll be slapping these guys in. For this job, I'm using Champion spark plugs. The part number is RER8ZWYPB4. These are the plugs I pulled out. Here we've got the actual plugs themselves. From what I've read, they're supposed to be gapped to 0.043. Here's a feeler gauge. If you don't know what it is, go get one from the auto parts store. Make sure you check each one of your spark plugs. A couple of them were a little out of spec, and sometimes they get dropped. So make sure you do that before you put them in. Also, don't just drop them in the hole. That's how you bend the electrode and gap them out. So put it on the tool, tool holds it, set the tool into the hole, and thread it by hand at first. Then you can use your ratchet and your torque wrench to get it all the way down. These ones in the back, I have to take this assembly apart because this extension's too long and I can't get it in. So I put the socket in first and then put the extension into it. Okay, these spark plugs go to 13 foot-pounds. Spark plugs in and torque to spec. We can go ahead and get some dielectric grease and put it at the mouth of each one of the spark plug boots. And you only need about a pea size worth, just enough to kind of fill the hole. And then pop them in. Here we go. Once you get everything back together, make sure you haven't dropped anything down inside of these ports. I probably should have plugged them off, but I've done it enough that I'm not too worried. Worst comes to worst, I blow my engine up. After that, it's time to put the intake back on. You go through and start tightening your intake plenum bolts. Start in the middle and working a star pattern out. I'm just seating these with the tool. I'm going to torque them in a bit. These get torqued to about 5 to 6 foot-pounds. Make sure you do the torque spec because these can kind of feel a little weird as they're going in. Get a lot of resistance. Remember, a star pattern. From there, it's basically reverse of disassembly. Get all your hoses back where they go. You start placing them kind of in the general vicinity. And before you know it, you'll have a running car pretty soon. Don't forget to put your EGR valve back on. This one might be a little tricky with the angles and whatnot, but we'll get it. And like that, we got our EGR valve back on. Just need to put the bolts in. That clip connector back on. Don't forget to put your 410mm bolts back in here. There you go, friends. That's the spark plug job wrapped up on a 2017 to a current year Chrysler Pacifica. If this video helped you out, please leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave some comments to tell me how this helped you out. Until next time, this is Nick with Hood Rats. Peace!